In the years of the 1930s, Newport was a city that was in the hands of the gangsters. Crime was the rule of the day, and citizens was being scared, the police were powerless, and politicians were bought off. The top dog in the criminal underworld was Salvatore Zaza, aka the Godfather, and head of what was then known as the Zaza crime family. But things began to change as a masked man emerged from the shadows, driving around in his car, the Silver Phantom, and aided by his partner, another masked vigilante, waged war on the city's top gangland figures and other notable criminals. That man was Benjamin Benny Cohen, a city councilman, but to the city of Newport, he was simply known as the Masked Dragon. I'm Harrison Phillips, city historian and butler to the Cohen family. I'm writing a series of entries about the dragon's exploits, all his adventures, all the crimes that were committed in this city, and all the criminals he and his allies brought to justice. In today's story, we see the team take on one of the public enemies that was on the other side of the country, a notorious bank robber and kidnapper who's decided to come to town. It is also in this story where Mr. Cohen reveals everything to Miss Scott. This is the Dragon's Wars. We begin today's story in the early months of 1937. A Ford pulls up to Newport Bank. Four men step out. They were bank robbers, and they were here to rob the Newport Bank.
Charges are on a timer. Keep that in mind. I get it. Remember, the gates you're going through are a special apples through the first gate.
Why is it off?
Oh, Lord. Let the hostages know what happens to heroes, yeah? Save the movies. Hurry up. Now repackage that other crew's hardware. It's going to be a whole lot more difficult.
I get it.
Stadium gates in the... Something.
It ended with them getting away with over $20,000 and a dead security guard. The criminals in question was the Hamilton Gang, named after their leader, Van Ugly Hamilton. He decided to come to Newport to lay low and pull some jobs in the city, as Newport was pretty much a safe haven for criminals. They came here when things got too hot in the Midwest, and he thought he could come here to Newport and pull a few jobs and head out. But he was wrong. Dead wrong. Now, just as this was going on, Miss Scott and Mr. Cohen were on a date at a local cafe. Things were starting to get serious between the two. This was making things harder for them, as Miss Scott was finding it harder to keep her involvement that she was working with the Masked Dragon from him, while he was finding it harder to keep the secret that he was the Masked Dragon. Later that night, after Mr. Cohen and Mr. Green were traveling that night to find any local hoods to interrogate for information on the whereabouts of the Hamilton Gang, but their results were coming up empty, so they decided to go back to HQ, where they ran into Tony and began to talk about what their next move might be, And it was about that time they unmasked themselves. And just so happens, Lepke just walked in and saw them without their masks on. He had accidentally found out their real identities. He saw that, but when he saw it, he swore to them he'd keep it a secret, but said that it was good that there were no more secrets. And this gave Mr. Cohen the idea to go and tell Miss Scott the truth. He thought it was time to reveal his identity to her. A day later, he met up with Miss Scott outside the second bank of New Court. It was here where he was about to tell her everything, but it was all ruined as the same car from the bank job and the previous bank job happened to pull up. It was them bank robbers again. Hamilton and his men came out and were about to do a bank robbery again, but Mr. Cohen thought it might be best to step in.
Great work your plastic surgeons have been doing. On the floor, now! Stay close, stay... There, boys. I got this covered. Keep going. I'll get to work on the cops with these bulldogs. More heat, guys. Watch out. Take out the cop cars if you can. There's some serious heat out here.
The men managed to get away, but they ended up shooting several civilians and unfortunately wounded Miss Scott. She was quickly rushed to hospital. She managed to survive, but this angered Mr. Cohen, and he wanted payback. Later that night, the Masked Dragon and the Demon went to the Zaza family estate and went to interrogate the whereabouts of the Hamilton gang. He gave them up and said that they were hiding at a local hotel lodge outside the city. When the Masked Dragon and the vigilantes arrived at the lodge, they were fired upon by the bank robbers. It was all a setup. They managed to take them all down, of all the members of the Hamilton gang, but Van Hamilton managed to somehow make an escape. They realized that he was in a car, so they quickly got in theirs and began to chase him. The Silver Phantom managed to knock the Ford off the road and Hamilton died on impact. Later that night, the masked dragon went to visit Miss Scott in the hospital and see if she was alright. She said she was fine and would get out in the next 2 days. She then asked if Mr. Cohen was alright and that if he was shot. The masked dragon said he was fine, and was here where he began to remove his mask and reveal everything to her. He revealed his secret identity to be that of Mr. Cohen himself. He was the masked dragon. When I asked him why he did it, he said it was just finally time. And that is the end of today's story. Please join us next time as the masked dragon and the demon go up against the mob in the next adventure of the Dragon's Wars.